All right, welcome to the 25th edition of Before the Battle. I'm Nick Baldwin, and joining me, as always, is the man behind BestFightPicks.com, Daniel Levy, back on the show. Daniel, how's it going?
It's going amazing. I mean, it's always a monumental occasion whenever Anderson Silva is fighting. So he's fighting this weekend, and it's actually on Saturday afternoon. So, man, I'm stoked to have a lunch with Anderson Silva.
All right, and obviously Go Paolo is usually on the show. He's missing in action right now. I have no idea where he is. He might hop in midway through the show. I sent him the link, so we might have a fourth person actually on the show in a little bit. I'm not really sure, but joining us for now, anyways, is also a writer for Sportsnet.ca, also the host of The Parting Shot, James Lynch, on Before the Battle for, I believe, the very first time. James, how are you?
I think I've been on before. It's either this or MMA Junior. I always get confused, but either way, glad to be here. Glad I got called up to the big leagues on this show, filling in for Paolo. And you got to get a Canadian from the East Coast, so I'm glad to represent.
Absolutely. We don't have tons of time, about an hour, so it should be a fairly typical show. We're going to skip the first three fights of UFC Fight Night London. UFC Fight Night 84 goes down this Saturday. And we'll start things off with a very interesting lightweight matchup between Norman Park and Rustam Khabilov. James, I'll start with you. Who do you like in this 155-pound clash?
May surprise some people here. I actually like Norman Park in this fight. I think the wrestling and I just think the experience in this fight will serve him well. I think Khabilov's been really touted, but there are some fights where he really has sort of fallen short. For me, I think sort of the difference in this, like I said, is sort of the experience and just the fact that I think Park is kind of being overlooked here. I think he gets it done by decision in this fight. I'm kind of surprised at the odds here. I thought it would be a little bit closer, but give me Norman Park by decision.
All right, Daniel, do you like the underdog here, Norman Park, like James does, or are you going with Rustam Khabilov, who hasn't actually fought since nearly a year?
I like James' pick a lot. I mean, if that cashes, that's a very sharp play, especially with the line, considering where the number is right now. Here's the thing, man. It's really hard for me to fade these Russians. Just to bet against them is really hard, especially the dudes from Dagestan. So, tread with caution. I know he lost his last two fights, but still, it's going to be tough. The thing with Norman Park that is keeping me away from a bet is just that he tends to make fights too close. Now, at the same token, I do think he's very underrated. He beat Leo Santos, but got deducted a point. And we all know Leo Santos is a very good fighter. He went there, neck and neck with Trinaldo, very close split decision with T-Bow, but that's the point. It's just a little bit too close. So there is a chance he'll win, but I feel like it's a 50-50 fight. I tend to take the dogs on 50-50 fights, but I'm going to take Khabilov, but I hope James cashes his bet here.
I mean, at least Norman Park isn't fighting a potentially juiced-up Brazilian in Brazil like he has fairly often as of late with, obviously, Trinaldo, who didn't actually pop, but, of course, T-Bow and guys like that. I fade Norman Park a lot. I just don't think it's hard to call him overrated because it's not like he's this guy who is touted to be the next big thing at lightweight, but I do feel his skills are almost overrated. I really like Rustam Khabilov here. I like him a lot. I don't think he finishes the fight because Norman Park is tough. He often goes to decisions. Rustam Khabilov oftentimes goes to decisions as well. It's a bit interesting because Khabilov hasn't been in the cage for quite some time since his loss to Adriano Martins, but honestly, I feel Khabilov is a bit underrated. He looked really good against Benson Henderson, former UFC lightweight champion, current Bellator fighter who's challenging for the welterweight title in just a couple months or so. I like Khabilov here. I give him the advantage really wherever the fight goes. I like him by fairly dominant unanimous decision. All right, moving on, we have a middleweight matchup between Bradley Scott and Christoph Jocko. Daniel, do you like the slight underdog here in Bradley Scott, or are you going with the Polish pole fighter, Christoph Jocko?
I really like this kid, Christoph Jocko, a lot. I think he's got a lot of potential. It's just a matter of, is he going to show up and rise to the occasion? I think this could be one of those situations like Sean Strickland where, his first couple fights, you saw that raw talent, but then his last fight with Alex Garcia really came into fruition when he knocked him out. So this could be the time when Christoph Jocko really rises and, gets that big win, but at the same time, he's got to be careful because Brad Scott's super durable. He's got a really good guillotine. He's got a good left hook. So as long as Christoph Jocko, does what he's been doing, fighting smart, mixing the striking to the takedowns, I think he can grind out the decision here.
Now, James, do you like Jocko here, or are you going with Bradley Scott?
I'm going with Jocko here. Dan sort of touched on some of the points that I was going to get to, but the main thing here for me is just that, Jocko's a guy that will always seems to find a way to win. He finished a lot of fights before he signed with the UFC. We've seen him mainly go to decision in his UFC career. I kind of think that theme's going to go here. Brad Scott's a guy you can't count out. That's why the line is a lot closer on this one, but give me Jocko here. Just think he's a little bit, further ahead in his career. He's only 26 years old. I think he's, progressing a little bit better than Brad Scott is, so give me him by decision.
Now, both of these guys surprised me in their respective last outings. I picked Askren against Jocko, and I picked Dylan Andrews against Bradley Scott. Then again, of course, it's Dylan Andrews. He was cut for a good reason. I will go with Jocko here. Not really confident. I look at it as a fairly close matchup. I don't have too much more to say. You guys already touched on most of the points. Jocko, I think he's just a bit better in the overall mixed martial arts game. I like him by decision. Like James pointed out, he's mostly gone to the decisions in his UFC tenure. I think he continues that and wins a fairly close decision. Moving on, we have a featherweight matchup between Arnold Allen and Yaotsin Metsa. James, do you like Metsa here, or the fairly sizable favorite in Arnold Allen?
This is Arnold Allen's fight to win. Young guy, 22 years old, obviously made a pretty impressive UFC debut, getting the submission win there. This guy finishes fights. We're looking at a guy in Meza who really has been fairly lackluster in his UFC career. I think all the momentum here is with Allen. The UFC knows what they're doing. The odds makers agree too. I mean, he's obviously a sizable favorite here. Give me Arnold Allen by finish in this fight. I think he gets it done.
Daniel, do you like Metsa here, or are you going with the big favorite in Arnold Allen?
Yeah, Allen's one of these young kids that's really hyped, and one thing I really like about him is that he's overcome adversity in fights. He's been rocked before and come back to win. He's lost before, so he's not undefeated, and he can finish fights that he's been hurting. So I like those qualities a lot in a fighter. And with Meza, he's your typical journeyman, but in the UFC, he's not your regional scene journeyman. And if you can't beat Meza, it's like a marking point. It's a benchmark, but I do think that Arnold Allen is going to get past it. Obviously, odds makers agree. That's why the line is where it is. As far as me playing it, I'm not going to play it, but I do think Arnold Allen's going to get the victory here.
Yeah, I like Arnold Allen here as well. Metsa has been fairly tough. He's fairly durable. He doesn't get stopped too often. I actually do like Allen here by stoppage, though, which is a bit interesting because he was losing in his UFC debut before making a come from behind. I believe a submission victory could have been a knockout, but I do think, like you both said, I do think the UFC knows what they're doing. Arnold Allen is a young, up-and-coming talent in the 145-pound division. Metsa really isn't. He has a 21-10 record. I really like Arnold Allen here inside the distance. Moving on, we have Scott Askren, who I mentioned earlier on in the show, taking on Chris Dempsey. Fairly, I think we can all agree Scott Askren gets the job done. Unless you guys want to pick Chris Dempsey, go ahead. James, if you are, tell me why. If not,
no, absolutely not. No, I'm picking Scott Askren. I will say, though, I'm not betting this fight. Scott Askren, very unpredictable. I'll never, ever forget his UFC debut when he lost to Sin Blad, and that just screwed up a lot of parlays for me. A lot of people are touting this guy. Really hasn't lived up to expectations, but I do think he gets the job done here against Chris Dempsey.
Daniel, do you like Askren here? The one of the biggest favorites, I believe, on the card, other than, of course, Tom Breeze, or are you going with Chris Dempsey?
I mean, he should get it done, right? He should knock out Chris Dempsey in the first round, but I also thought he should have knocked out the two guys he lost split decisions to in the first round. So, like James said, he has been a little bit inconsistent in the UFC. This is such a favorable matchup. I mean, they're like being like, come on, bro, take advantage of this opportunity, grab it with both hands, go out there and knock this guy out. And if he can't knock this guy out, man, I don't know what to say. But, and the odds reflect that as well.
Yeah, Chris Dempsey just really isn't that high level of a fighter. I really like Scott Askren here, but I not like overly confident. It's not like he's just a complete lock on this card, in my opinion, because he has been back and forth. He hasn't had tons and tons of success. He hasn't been destroying guys that he probably should destroy. He should knock out or submit Chris Dempsey, but I honestly think asking. I think Dempsey will be able to survive. I like asking here by decision, actually. I'm not sure it'll be the best fight we've ever seen, but I definitely like Scott asking here. Definitely by decision, if not by knockout. A very interesting bantamweight matchup we got. Marlon Vera taking on the returning Davy Grant, who hasn't fought since 2013. Marlon Vera is coming off a submission win over Roman Salazar. Now, I know, Daniel, you're really high on the Brazilian here, or the not
Ecuadorian.
Brazilian, Ecuadorian. Do you like him here?
I absolutely like him here. I mean, first of all, let's not even factor in, the fact that Davy Grant's got a 2-year layoff and Marlo Chito Vera was plus 175 on the opener. Let's put that on the back burner for a sec. Marlon Vera is one of the most focused and determined young individuals I've ever met in my life. This kid's 21 or 22. He's got 2 kids. He's got a wife, and his daughter has this syndrome where the muscles in her mouth don't move, so she can't smile. And he's determined to be able to make the money so he can pay for that surgery. So this guy lives and breathes this stuff. And, I mean, he's not going to come here to play games. He's not going to come here soft, out of shape. He's coming to fight. And then you factor in the layoff and the plus 175. You got to go with this guy because, he trains in all areas. His stand-up, he throws big spin kicks. His hands are pretty decent. And on the ground, as you saw in his last fight where he won a performance of the night bonus over, I believe, a D1 or D2 wrestler, he can submit you off his back. He can also knock you out off his back. He knocked out Henry Briones, the guy that Cody Garbrandt couldn't knock out. So I'm all over Chito Vera here.
James, do you agree with Daniel here? Do you like Chito Vera, or will Davy Grant get the job done in his return matchup?
Davy Grant's going to get the job done here. I know the layoff scares a lot of people, but I think overall, if we're looking at the experience, we're looking at the fact that Davy Grant went on the Ultimate Fighter. He's fought some high-level guys. I do like Davy Grant here. Am I going to place a bet on this? Absolutely not. You can't be betting guys that are coming off layoffs unless your name's Dominic Cruz. So I don't see any sort of upside here to betting Davy Grant. And here's the other thing too we got to consider. Okay, the UFC. This card's in London. They want these London guys to be successful. I realize this is a tough matchup for him in taking on Vera, but the UFC must know something as well about this fight where they probably don't want Davy Grant to lose. So I am going to favor Davy Grant here. It's going to be a nice fight. This potentially could be fight of the night. I really do think both these guys have the skills to really bring it and really put on a show for the fans, but I got to go with Davy Grant.
I'm going to agree with Daniel here. I really, really like Marlon Vera here. And actually, inside the distance, I am shocked that he is a plus 175 underdog here. In my opinion, he should be a favorite here and possibly even a 2-1 favorite for that. I really like Marlon Vera here. I think his skill set is just more high level than Davies, but again, Daniel mentioned it. James, you mentioned it as well. Grant hasn't fought since 2013. I can't pick a guy who hasn't fought in 2.5 years or whatever the number is, unless, like you mentioned, you're Dominic Cruz or another just really high level fighter. I really like Marlon Vera here by submission. I think he gets the job done against Davy Grant.
And Nick, sorry to interrupt, but I believe Davy Grant's last win is against a guy that's 7-37. Let me just throw that out there.
And we just
but hold on a second. You got to talk about the Ultimate Fighter, though, right? He fought exhibition fights on there too. So I know it looks like that on his record, but on the Ultimate Fighter, he was fighting really tough guys on that show. I can't remember off the top of my head who he fought, but definitely wasn't a record that bad.
Yeah, he beat Danny Martinez, and then he wasn't able to fight in the semis because his opponent Gutierrez missed weight. So Davey was automatically moved to the finals.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting, but nevertheless, he still hasn't fought for a really long time. So,
interestingly enough, both of them were they didn't fight their semifinal fight for different reasons. With Davey because his opponent missed weight, and with Marlon because he had a skin condition which took him out of the competition. So it's kind of interesting how Joe Silva sees these things and he matches these guys up.
and that's kind of disappointing too, because I honestly think Marlon Vera would have gone on to win the competition.
Yeah, it would have been interesting, man, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that the season that Yair Rodriguez and
Yes, yes.
Jose Quinones, and, man, that was, I'll tell you what, man, a lot of those guys have been doing pretty good. I know a couple got cut, but, Benitez, I mean, he beat Clay Collard, upset him as, 2.5-1 underdog, so, yeah, a couple of the guys have been showing up, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. We got one more fight on the prelims, and then on to the four-fight main card, exclusively on Fight Pass, unless you're in Canada, and then you get to watch it on TV. We have Makwan Amirkhani taking on Mike Wilkinson, and Wilkinson again has been out of action since October of 2014, so hasn't been as long as Davy Grant, but still quite some time in the sport of mixed martial arts. Daniel, do you like Makwan Amirkhani here, Mr. Finland, or will the Warrior get the job done?
Honestly, it's a really tough one for me to pick because with Makwan Amirkhani, if you watch his regional scene fights, they're not that impressive at all. But then you watch his UFC fights, and he's running through dudes. So it's like, is he fighting bums, or is he actually just getting that much better? And with Mike Wilkinson, he only fights, once a year. And in his last fight, he knocked Nicholas Backstrom dead, basically. And I mean, changed his career forever because at that point, Backstrom, I believe he was a minus 1,000 favorite. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe minus 800. And a lot of people were saying this guy was the future of that division because of the way he submitted Ninamaki. But Wilkinson went in there and just destroyed him. And then he hasn't fought since, so we don't really know what to expect. But he should have a solid base to stuff the takedowns and potentially knock him out. But with the layoff, it's kind of hard to pick him. So I'm really going to enjoy this one, man. I want to see which guy's the real deal.
Now, James, do you like Makwan Amirkhani here or Mike Wilkinson?
I think Amirkhani is going to win the fight. Unfortunately, I can't stand this guy. I've been vocal about this before. Everything about him just annoys me a lot. I would love Mike Wilkinson to win this fight, and I actually do think he has the potential to win this fight. It is at home. He is he's a guy that can never be counted out, especially like like Dan mentioned, in that fight against Backstrom, right? So. Yeah, I think Wilkinson definitely has the ability to get the job done. Amirkhani's probably going to win by submission. I'll say second round, but I really want him to lose, so I may throw some money on Mike Wilkinson just because I don't like Amirkhani.
Yeah. They've been talking a lot of trash too, man. There's a lot of bad blood, and there's a whole backstory with I don't know if you guys heard why Amirkhani left All Stars, but man, there's so much heading into this fight. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, I like Makwan Amirkhani here as well. It's kind of funny because I don't know what it's with this guy, but when he debuted, I was like, this guy is. I'm not too fond of this guy. He seemed just kind of cocky, but he has grown on me. I think he is a really good talent in the up and coming level and whatnot of the UFC. I like him by stoppage here. Again, you can never trust a guy who's coming off the layoff. I was really, really impressed with Mike Wilkinson in his last fight, but that was in 2014. Will he be a completely different fighter? Positively, possibly, but the layoff could affect him. We could see some cage rust. I have to go with Makwan Amirkhani. We've seen him more recent than we have Wilkinson, and even I would probably pick Makwan Amirkhani here. Even if Wilkinson hadn't fought recently, I just think his ground game will be too much. And it's kind of funny because after his debut over Andy Ogle, he obviously got that knockout in like 8 seconds. So everyone was saying, oh, this guy is a beast on the feet. But honestly, most of his fights are finished on the ground. I like him here again by submission, midway through the fight, maybe even the first round. All right, moving on. The first fight on the four-fight main card. This has Fight of the Night written all over it. We have Francisco Rivera taking on Brad Pickett. James, do you like One Punch here or Cisco?
I like Cisco here to get the job done. First round knockout. I know some people like Brad Pickett. Pickett is kind of being undervalued here as far as what he can do. I mean, let's not forget he was very, very, very close to finishing Thomas Almeida in that fight. So I definitely think there's potential here for him to surprise. Rivera's just got to keep his head on straight. He can't go out like he did in his last fight against Lineker and just go balls to the wall. If he does that, he'll get caught. He could be knocked out himself, but. Overall, on paper, if we're looking at this fight, Cisco Rivera is the better fighter. He's the younger fighter. He should get the job done here, so I'm taking him by knockout.
And also joining us right now was the guy that was supposed to be here about 20 minutes ago or so. Go, Paulo. How's it going, Paulo?
Hey, it's better late than never. I think I just jumped in at the right time, guys.
Yeah, the good fights have started
Hey, I
with
actually like a
Cisco
lot of
and
fights.
Pickett.
I did tell you the other time that I do like this card better than the last card, so you know, I'm pretty
Quickly
excited for this
run,
one.
quickly, if you have the prelim card open, quickly run through who you're picking. Don't break them out, down at all. Just say who you're picking, just to catch up slightly.
Okay, I'm just gonna run through the underdogs. I think I really like. You guys were breaking down the last fight. I really like Wilkinson in that fight. I think that's a clear striker versus grappler fight. Yeah, and but the thing about Wilkinson is he's got good takedown defense, so I think he can knock out what's his name, Mr. Finland. I like what's it called Dempsey against Ascom because wait, that's the right one, right? Yeah, yeah, Ascom. I'm not really high on Ascom. I think Dempsey can like wrestle him and beat him. What was there? I like Jocko against Brad Scott. And I like Norman Park against Kabilov actually.
Nice, nice. I took him too.
These guys picking Norman Park. I don't get it. Doesn't really matter though. Let's. Oh yeah, let's move.
And if, yeah,
We're
and for the
on.
current fight,
Go ahead.
I like I like Pickett, but the thing about Pickett is that guy really likes to get into brawls, and Cisco's not the guy you want to get into the brawl because that's the only way I think Cisco wins if Pickett brawls with him, and Pickett's gonna get knocked out, man. I think Almeida polished up Pickett's chin, and Cisco's one of the hardest punchers in the division or in the whole of UFC, so he touches Pickett's chin, Pickett's going out if he doesn't fight smart.
All right, Daniel. Do you like Brad Pickett or Cisco Rivera?
Well, first of all, the one time I bet on Cisco Rivera, he was a plus 200 dog against Mizugaki, and on paper, isn't that like such a great play? I mean, Cisco Rivera versus Mizugaki, you think he's going to go out there and knock this guy out, right? And then he's the one that ends up getting dropped twice by Mizugaki and gets grinded out. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I'm just not impressed with this guy at all. You know, he's a quick tapper also. And with Brad Pickett, people are acting like he's been knocked out 100 times. The only time he's ever been knocked out is by 21-0 with 20 finishes. Tomas Almeida, who's the future champion anyways. So I got that plus 175 here. I think that there's more ways to win for Pickett. I mean, we can stand in the pocket. We'll give Francisco Rivera a chance if Pickett stands in the pocket, but I still think that he can drop him. I mean, look, he went out there. I bet on Thomas Almeida against Brad Pickett, and I was sweating that bet. I mean, he dropped Thomas Almeida twice. If he can drop Thomas Almeida twice, he can drop Francisco Rivera and tap him out. So I got I got the Brit in England.
Now, I quickly want to ask you, Daniel, is the John Lineker loss the only reason you say Rivera is a possibly quick tapper?
No, I mean, his other submission losses are. I mean, in the favorite fight, I know he got poked by an eye, but some guys, they just react differently. You know, I didn't like how he turtled up and it was a quick tap. I wish he would have ran away and been like, hey, ref, I just got poked. I mean, certain guys react differently, and what I've seen from him is that he doesn't really have that championship heart, man.
All right. I really like Brad Pickett. As a person, as a fighter, he's a great guy. But I gotta go with Francisco Rivera here. I was impressed with Brad in his fight with Thomas Almeida. Of course, Almeida landed the knee, and it was lights out for one punch. But this is a very close fight. It really could go either way. And it has Fight of the Night written all over it. Aside from maybe the main event, this is probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. Like I said, I think it can go either way because although I do believe Brad should probably think about stepping away pretty soon, power is the last thing to go. His nickname is One Punch. He still has that one punch power, especially at 135 pounds. But with all of that said, I have to go with Rivera here. I just think he has a bit more left in the tank. I mean, stylistically, it's a fantastic matchup. Skillfully, Brad's probably the better fighter, but it comes down to who should be in the sport currently. And I mean, I'm not dying for Pickett to retire. Not like Bigfoot, who really we can all agree should not be fighting. But Brad, definitely does not have much left in the gas tank whatsoever. I honestly think Rivera probably knocks him out. He's a very hard puncher. Most of his wins are by knockout. I mean, I think the clear pick here is Rivera. I would like to see one punch get the job done, and I definitely can see a clear path to victory for him, but I got to go with Rivera here. All right, moving on, we have the biggest favorite on the card, welterweight up-and-comer Tom Breeze taking on Keita Nakamura. Paolo, I'll start with you. Who do you like, Tom Breeze, or are you going with Nakamura here?
Oh, you just dropped out right as you asked.
I'll go with James then. Who do you like?
Tom Breeze is going to live up to his last name and make this fight a breeze. He's going to go in there and get the job done, probably win by knockout. Look at the line. It's no surprise here. He's like a minus 11. He's a minus 1165 right now. He's the biggest favorite on the card. Tom Breeze is the real deal. He's at a great camp right now with TriStar. This guy is the future. This is a showcase fight, guys. This is, we've seen this before with the UFC. Look at last year when Thomas Almeida fought in Montreal against Yves Jabouin. It's a showcase fight. This is the same sort of thing here. Tom Breeze is going to get a spectacular finish, and the UFC is going to pump this guy up because they're going to need him for international cards, and he's going to get a knockout here.
Daniel, I'm assuming you're going with Tom Breeze. Does he knock out Keita Nakamura?
Well, James, Nick, and Paula, you guys all know that I love the underdog. But if you're picking the underdog in this fight, I don't know what you're thinking, man, because Tom Breeze, he's going to knock him out in the first round. I mean, Jing Liang, he was putting on a show, but the thing with Jing Liang is he's not as good as Tom Breeze. I mean, Tom Breeze is the kind of guy that not only is he getting better every single fight, but he ends dudes' careers. I mean, have you heard from Luis Dutra since that knockout? He hasn't returned my calls. Have you heard from Cahal Pendred? I heard he retired, a guy that, you could barely win a decision against Cahal Pendred, and then he's getting knocked dead in the first round. So, take Tom Breeze here. Put him in your parlay if it adds any value whatsoever. Find that inside the distance prop. He's going to finish Keita Nakamura.
Now, Paulo, I'll say it again. I'm assuming you're going with Tom Breeze. If not, you better have a good explanation on why you're picking Nakamura. Do you like Breeze by knockout here?
I want to pick Nakamura just because if any case something crazy happens, I want to be like the only guy on record who said, "Oh, I got Keita Nakamura, guys. Exactly. I'm the greatest analyst. I'm a prophet. I got the can fighting back here." I don't know. Maybe Tom Breeze falls down, cuts himself, injures himself. Keita Nakamura wins by TKO. Bet the bank on it, guys. It's gonna happen for sure. No, I'm kidding, guys. In case you took that literally, don't bet on Nakamura by TKO. That's not gonna happen most likely unless Breeze, like I said, steps on like I don't know, maybe a scissor in there and cuts his foot open or something. No, Breeze by TKO first round.
Yeah, it's fairly unlikely that one of the cornermen, or I should say the ref, asked to cut off the gloves or cut a piece off, then the cornerman dropped the scissors. It could happen. We'll see. You got to go with Tom Breeze by first round knockout here. I would be surprised if it goes to the second round. Then again, Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000 went to the third round this past weekend, so anything can happen. But you got to go with Tom Breeze here. He's undefeated for a reason. Keita Nakamura just simply isn't that good anymore. He's a veteran. I'll give him that. He has a ton of fights, but he has very little gas left in the tank. He's coming off a third-round submission over Jing Liang Li. I think I've done this fight on podcast, I think like 3 times now, and I've probably said Li Jingliang's name different times every single time. Keita Nakamura coming off that win, but he didn't look good in that fight. Tom Breeze looked amazing against Cahal Pendred, who, is Cahal Pendred, but still got the job done inside the distance. First round knockout made him look amateur, honestly. Tom Breeze, he's an up-and-comer. I really like him here inside the distance, first round knockout, and this guy will do big things in the 170-pound division. All right, co-main event time. Gegard Mousasi, James's favorite fighter, taking on Talis Ladies. And James, I've listened to Parting Shot. I've listened to something else that I believe you're on. You're picking Talis Ladies here. You're going against your favorite. Tell us why.
I may be a fan of Gegard Mousasi, but at the end of the day, I'm an objective person when it comes to predicting fights, and I just don't like this fight for Gegard Mousasi. And a lot of people will say that on paper, Mousasi is the more well-rounded fighter, and I'm not going to disagree with that. He certainly is. But I have to wonder, is he taking this fight as seriously as he should be? I mean, he's coming off a knockout loss here. I don't think his chin's gone. I definitely don't think that at all. But I do think his pride will get the better of him, and I think that he will, trying to stand and trade with Talis Latis. And I actually think that Latis' stand-up is a little bit better than Gegard Mousasi's. I think Latis is going to turn this into a dogfight. He's a much different fighter than the fighter that we saw in the UFC the first time around, when he fought Anderson Silva for the title and everything like that. Everyone just knew him as a jiu-jitsu guy. But here's a guy, since then, went on a huge winning streak. Should have beat Michael Bisping in that last fight. I actually scored that for Talis Latis. And, I just think he's going to get in Mousasi's face and really push the pace. Mousasi's not going to have his way like he did with other opponents. And the other thing that's a bit concerning here, too, is that Mousasi, a lot of his wins are against guys that aren't even in the UFC anymore. Costa Philippou, Mark Munoz, Henderson, really not, kind of on the tail end of his career at this point. So for me, I do got to go with Talis Latis. I think he wins a close decision. But, yeah, I mean, on paper, like I said, Mousasi's the better fighter. I just think Latis is going to really bring it to him and get the job done.
All right, Daniel. You also like Talis Latis. I know that. I've listened to your show already. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, thank you for listening to my show. And, I really respect what James said. You got to be objective. That's what being professional is. And, I'm being objective as well because I'm a Mousasi fan too. I mean, how could you not be a Mousasi fan? This guy's fought everyone. He's fought Jacare, Mark Hunt, Machida. I mean, he's literally been in there OSP with everyone. And he's such a veteran. But like Conor McGregor said, to James' point, it can be cold, it can be ruthless, but it is never personal. And that comes in terms of picking. But in terms of Mousasi, to also quote Conor McGregor, he's complacent and he's maintaining. So, I mean, with Talis Latis, a lot of people have this image in their heads of when he fought Anderson Silva and he flopped to his back for 5 straight rounds, but they don't realize that, he's changed everything around, man. He got cut from the UFC. He had to start back from the bottom. He's been finishing guys in the first round with strikes. I mean, he's training at Novo Niao, and then you factor in his credentialed jiu-jitsu, and I just think it's a no-brainer that, he'll be able to mix up the strikes and the takedowns and beat Mousasi.
All right, Paolo, do you like the underdog here, Talis Latis, or will Gegard Mousasi get back into the winning column?
No, I think Mousasi's got this. Yeah, I totally respect James and Daniel and everyone else who's picking Latis to win because I think this is going to be a close decision. I mean, I don't think Gegard Mousasi's finished. No, actually, he did finish guys in the UFC, but he usually wins by decision. I mean, he finished Mark Munoz, but everyone was finishing Mark Munoz at that time. He knocked out Dan Henderson, and Don Henderson's chin is all but gone at this point. So I think it's going to be a decision. It's going to be a close one. I already put a bet on Mousasi, and I think I'm going to be sweating that bet. But I think overall he's just a better striker than Talis Latis, and he's going to keep the fight standing. Now, I think it's going to be close in certain aspects of the fight, so I'm definitely going to be sweating my bet on that one, but I got Gegard Mousasi here.
Yeah, and this is a very close fight, one of the closest fights on paper on this card. I'm going to go with Mousasi here. This is very strange because obviously Latis has a submission advantage on the canvas, but I honestly like Mousasi to grind out a decision here. I think he'll just do what Mousasi does most of the time in the UFC, as of late especially, other than, say, knocking out Dan Henderson, which it seems like almost everybody nowadays can except for Tim Bosch. I like Mousasi here by decision, but I actually, and the reason I'm saying by decision, in somewhat of a grinding affair, I too think Latis is a better striker than him. So, I mean, on paper, Latis could definitely win this fight. He could submit him from the bottom or even just knock him out. I don't think Mousasi's chin is maybe as bad as some people think. After that knockout to Uriah Hall, anyone gets knocked out by Uriah Hall if Uriah Hall lands that kick, which he does. He doesn't more often than not, but when he does, it's lights out for anybody. I'm going to go with the favorite here, Gegard Mousasi, by decision, but definitely not confident, and Latis could definitely win, and win wherever, like, really, ladies could knock him out, ladies could submit him, and the most surprising would be ladies by decision, honestly, but I got to go with Gegard Mousasi here. All right.
Ladies not gonna finish him, man. Like, this guy has the best chin in MMA. I mean, it took like a spinning back kick to his face and a flying knee and a lot of punches, and he wasn't even out. The referee just stopped the fight because he was dazed. That's it. But it took all of that to, like, put him out. And Tad's latest, he knocked out Francis Carmon. Like, what's his name? Phil Davis knocked out Francis Carmon. So.
But one thing I will mention is the experience here for Musashi. I mean, he's been in a lot of fights. He's taken a decent amount of damage throughout his career. Is this the fight where he gets knocked out? I don't think it is, but it is something to consider because of the fact that he has been in so many wars, not just with MMA, but he fought K1 kickboxing as well too. You look at some of those guys who've come out of their chins, eventually diminish. So I don't know if it's now, but certainly I think that it's something to consider in this fight.
And it happens to every great fighter. I mean, look at Chuck Liddell. He used to be able to hit that guy with everything but the kitchen sink, and then Rich Franklin's knocking him out with one punch. So it happens to every great fighter, and the fact that Mousasi was finally knocked out that first time, that has to count for something, man. I know that it took a spin kick and a flying knee and all the punches like Paolo mentioned, but it still happened. He still took that spin kick and that flying knee and all those punches, and that had to have an effect. So from here on going forward, we're going to have to see what happens.
Yeah, Daniel, I'm just going to add, Daniel brought up a great point. Gegard Mousasi has been known to have a fairly durable chin. Obviously, this was, I believe, the first time or maybe the second time at most he's ever been knocked out. And that goes to show you that, and he's a veteran. He's only 30 or so, 30, 31, but he has a ton of fights. His record is 37-6 and 2 draws. And he's only 30, which is insane, but it all adds up eventually, like Daniel mentioned, even though it took a flying knee and a kick and everything like that from Uriah Hall, his chin could absolutely go downhill from here. Will it? I'm not really sure. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Ladies could land and knock Gegard out. It's a very possible outcome. All right, let's move on to the main event of the evening, the return of the greatest of all time, Anderson the Spider Silva, taking on Michael the Count Bisping. Daniel, I'll start with you. Do you like the former middleweight champion here, or are you going with the underdog, Michael Bisping?
It's an interesting spot because, Anderson Silva in his prime, this is the guy that would do stuff that no one else would do. It looked like he was in the Matrix. He would make guys look like amateurs. It was kind of like Roy Jones Jr., if you go back and you watch his highlight reel, he's got his hands behind his back, he's putting his chin up in the air, and he's doing cocky things that make dudes look like amateurs, and it's very, very entertaining. And that's what Anderson brought to the table, and the reason he was able to do that, well, obviously, he's a great athlete, and he's very technical, but a lot of that had to do with speed. He was able to rely on his speed. That's why he's able to put his hands down and do all that cocky shit that we find entertaining, because he had that speed. But as we all know, speed's the first thing to go as you get older. Now he's about 40, 41. Obviously he's still got the power, because power is the last thing to go, but that speed has severely been diminished. Now as far as Bisping is concerned, he hasn't been able to rise to the occasion in the big moments, but he's also been fighting guys that at the time were performance enhanced. Now we know what went down with Silva, so I'm going to assume that that's behind him now, and I'm going to also assume that he looks a step below he looked against Nick Diaz. And I thought in that performance against Nick Diaz, I thought Michael Bisping could have been competitive with that guy. So if I'm expecting a lesser version of that guy and I see a plus 265, it's like James was talking about earlier with being objective. And look, I got an Anderson poster right behind me here. I love Anderson. I'll show all my friends Anderson fights, till the day I die. But is he going to win this fight? He should. But will he? I don't know, man. I think Bisping, one thing you can count on with him is that he's going to come to fight. He's got heart, and the only way he's going to lose is if he gets knocked out. So the Spider has to knock him out. But Bisping's not going to, he's not going to be scared. He's not going to, look for the door or anything like that. He's coming to fight, man. He's got heart. So Anderson's got to put him out. The question is, will he put him out?
All right, James, do you agree with what Daniel said first off in the fact that Anderson's only way to win is by knockout? And do you like Anderson or do you like Bisping?
I disagree slightly. I think that Anderson could win this fight by decision, but it would just be more on volume. I think that Anderson could land the harder shots. Bisping is not really a power guy, so to speak. He's more of a volume guy. Silva is a power guy. I still think there is power there. I think you look at the fight with Nick Diaz. Diaz is an extremely durable guy. A lot of people don't look good against Nick Diaz. You look at George St. Pierre. I don't think that was one of his best performances, and that was more a credit to Diaz just being a really durable guy. Silva does have a bit of the layoff here. He's getting older. The only guy he's lost to is Chris Weidman. I have a hard time picking against anyone who's only ever lost to Chris Weidman in the UFC. So I'm going with Anderson Silva here. I think he can win by knockout or potentially decision. I just think for me, Bisping can improve everything he wants, and obviously he's in the best shape of his life and everything else like that. But Bisping is always the bridesmaid, never the bride. I think in this case it's going to be the same thing. Anderson Silva is going to get the job done, and Bisping is not going to get a title shot.
All right, Paolo, do you like the greatest of all time, Anderson the Spider Silva, former middleweight champion, or will Michael Bisping shock most of the world and get the job done?
I think it's going to be a close fight, a closer fight for a lot of the combined reasons of what James and Daniel said, that maybe Anderson Silva's really lost a step and he's going to be a little bit slower than he used to be. He's definitely not going to be clowning Michael Bisping like he did to Forrest Griffin or Yushin Okami or all those guys over there. He's not going to be weaving in and out of his punches like he used to, and crowds like, oh my god, what the heck is happening? But I still think he's the better overall striker, man. And I think he's gonna beat Bisping. And an interesting stat actually is that the underdog has only won once every Michael Bisping fight. So what that says is that we know that these books are rarely right all the time, but when it comes to Michael Bisping, his fights are fairly predictable. That if he's fighting a guy who the books think is better than him, he's going to lose. And if he's fighting a guy who the books think is worse than him, he's going to win. And the only underdog who actually won that time was Tim Kennedy. And I don't know if that was the fight where Michael Bisping was recovering from an eye injury or something like that, where he had like a messed up eye. So that might have played a huge factor in that fight on why he was just not himself and he got taken down and basically beat up by Tim Kennedy. But with all that said, but rambling on, I got Anderson Silva here, probably winning by decision, or let's go with decision here, a close decision actually. So if anyone's putting money on Anderson Silva, they're gonna be sweating that bet. They're gonna be sweating that for all 5 rounds.
Yeah, it's a close fight, but unless he's fighting the champion Luke Rockhold, or say even like a top contender like Weidman or Jacare, or even Yoel Romero, I cannot go against Anderson Silva. I like him here, and I can't say I like him a lot because Michael Bisping, even though James says he is the bridesmaid, I do agree. I don't think he'll ever get a title shot. I think if he was going to get a title shot, that would have been in the past, and he hasn't yet. So I don't think it's going to happen. He could if he beats Anderson, but of course he's already lost to Luke Rockhold and in devastating fashion. So it's tough to say what would happen if Bisping beats Anderson, but I don't think it's going to happen. I like Anderson here. I tend to agree with what you guys said about what Daniel said, I should say, about the steroids thing. I don't think he looked that great against Nick Diaz. Technically, he should look worse than that fight because Michael Bisping, I believe, is a tougher fight for Anderson than Nick Diaz is. He's bigger. I honestly think he's better at this point in both of their careers respectively. But you got to remember, the Diaz fight was his first fight back from the leg break. So that could have had a big impact on his performance. And it's crazy that some people are forgetting he broke his leg, and it's not like that was ages and ages ago. It's just being overpowered by the steroid bust and everything like that. But I honestly think I don't think we see an extremely good Anderson Silva, but I don't think we see a terrible Anderson Silva that looks deflated off of steroids. I think we see a similar level caliber fighter that we saw against Diaz, and I do think that's enough to beat Bisping, but definitely not in devastating fashion. I like Anderson Silva here by decision. A knockout wouldn't shock me, but I definitely like this to go the distance. People are saying Bisping has no way of winning. Honestly, he could outpoint Anderson. As crazy as it sounds, he's a volume striker, so he definitely could try and land more. I don't see it happening, but it's definitely a possibility, and I can see why people are picking Bisping. Honestly, just more of a fade on Anderson. Personally, I think that would be the case for most people picking Bisping. Anything else you guys want to add, whether that's about something the prelims we missed? Paolo, I know you didn't break down most of the other card. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, actually, the one other fight I wanted to see was the Arnold Allen fight. Now, I don't know if anyone said this, probably because, he has some similarities, but this guy's like the European Sage Northcutt, man. I mean, this guy's young. He's an upcoming prospect. He looks like a boy band member. I mean, and they're feeding him Yalcin Meza, and I mean, no disrespect to Yalcin Meza, but this guy's one of those guys who I think is only in the UFC so they can feed him to guys like Sergio Pettis and all these guys, and then get him and then make those guys look good. Then they're gonna feed him a newcomer or a late replacement guy so he can get a win and he can stay in the UFC. But yeah, Arnold Allen is definitely my fighter to watch if we're gonna be doing that segment here.
Yeah, you started off. I hate to steal half the battle segment. Daniel, though, who do you like? If you have to pick one guy, couple guys, whatever, doesn't really matter. Who is on your radar for UFC London?
What'd you say about half the battle? I missed that.
I said I hate to steal your segment, fighter to watch, but
yeah,
Paolo started off.
I got you, man. Marlon Vera for sure. I mean, like I mentioned, this is one of the most, youngest, the most determined young guys I've ever seen in my life. He's gonna do some special things. He's gonna surprise a lot of people, and he's gonna finish Davy Graham. So you definitely have to watch this fight.
Now, James, anyone else stand out to you? Anyone on your radar for this upcoming fight card?
Well, the fighter to watch is Anderson Silva. I mean, we got to see how he comes back here with the layoff, with everything that's happened. I mean, people are saying that, is his legacy tarnished, with the losses and the PEDs and everything else. I think this is kind of being overlooked. I think if he comes out here and finishes Michael Bisping, especially early in the fight, I think he definitely, solidifies the fact that he is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters ever, and people should, maybe not point so many fingers at him. So to me, Anderson Silva is the guy you got to watch.
Yeah, all three are definitely very good picks. Whether that's Marlon Vera, who I think gets the job done as an underdog, like I mentioned.
Can I comment on what James just said?
Go ahead.
If anyone is disputing the fact that Anderson Silva is one of the greatest of all time, slap them for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. If you don't consider. I consider, despite the steroid bust, despite the losses to Weidman, I still refer, and you've already heard me say it at least twice already on the show. I still consider Anderson Silva the greatest of all time. And yes, I am Canadian, and yes, GSP is Canadian. But it's tough to not call him the greatest of all time. And
Kyle Petrovich, the greatest of all time, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking most longest win streak in UFC history and most title defenses in UFC history. So the numbers speak for themselves.
Absolutely. Like I was saying, I think Brad Pickett is one guy you got to watch out for because, like Daniel mentioned, he has a very good chance in this fight. Like I said, of course, I'm going with Rivera, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where Brad's head is at after a knockout again, and to see if he can get the job done. Musasi is another guy coming off a loss. We don't see Gegard lose too often, so it's going to be interesting if he just kind of stays back and doesn't seem to care, or if he actually is motivated and ready to fight. Honestly, one an underrated middleweight contender in Talis Ladies, in my opinion. Also, I don't believe I mentioned him yet. Tom Breese. Look out for Tom Breese here. We already went through this fight, but he's going to knock out Caden Nakamura in the first round. You got to watch this fight. It's going to be a very impressive and devastating performance. I think with that, obviously, at this point in the show, before the battle, we'd be getting to our counter move teams, but unfortunately, as a counter move fan, counter move is no more. DraftKings, of course, a larger fantasy sports website, bought them out, and First, before we get to our DraftKings team, I don't know if you guys have one created. If not, I do. Doesn't really matter. But I want to get, James, your thoughts, because I know you played Countermove. I'm not sure if you played DraftKings. Maybe you have gotten into it since the news. I just want to quickly get your thoughts on the whole situation with the Countermove being bought by DraftKings.
Well, good for Countermove. I mean, at the end of the day, them getting bought by DraftKings was probably the best case scenario. I didn't know if Countermove was going to be in it for the long haul. It's tough to compete in fantasy MMA these days, in fantasy in general. It's tough to kind of do your thing. I personally really enjoyed Countermove. I like the aspect of, balancing out your team, picking guys that are going to finish and stuff. So for me, I will miss it, and I certainly used the free rolls as many as I could get them, so I'll miss that as well too. My account got transferred over to DraftKings. I was not a DraftKings player before the Countermove stuff got switched over. I made a team last week. I think I might have won like a couple dollars or something, but for me, it's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, I'll probably just adjust a bit to DraftKings. But I'm more into the betting MMA in general, and the pool that you and I are in, that I really enjoy as well too. So those are kind of more of what I'm into. I was never like a big Countermove guy. I'd play it, but it wasn't like something I really like cared about that much.
Sure, and Paolo, I know you were also big into you're big into both, especially DraftKings as of late. I know for today's knockout, it seems like every tweet of yours is a Countermove preview or a DraftKings preview. So give me your thoughts quickly on the whole situation with DraftKings buying Countermove and what this means for fantasy sports and whether or not you're disappointed.
Well, the only thing I'm sort of disappointed about was because I think you're part of the Countermove group on Facebook, and I'm very active in that group, and I made a lot of friends with the people in that group. So I really feel bad for them because they really loved Countermove, and they hated DraftKings with a passion. Like, you cannot mention DraftKings in that group. That's the fastest way to basically make yourself an unpopular person in that group. And yeah, basically they were talking to Aaron Ard and Christy and all the other people who was running draft Countermove at one point, and they were like, what's going on? Why are the games like dwindling? Before we used to have like Invicta, Bellator, Glory, all those things in there. It was fun. Nobody else offers fantasy for those like smaller promotions, right? And Countermove did it. So if you're a hardcore fan, Countermove was a place to be. And they started removing them. All we got were like the generic UFC games. We would start missing the free rolls, the $1 roll games, and then they were asking them, what's going on, guys? Well, what's going on with all of these? And then they would keep replying, oh, don't worry, we have something in the works. We have something in the works. And then the next thing you know, it shows that DraftKings just bought Countermove, and then all your funds were transferred to DraftKings. So they were all really upset about that. I mean, I was at some point too, except for the fact that I played DraftKings, so it didn't really matter to me. But that whole process in there was just, I think it was the most upsetting part. And the guys are actually starting a new league of their own, and I don't know what's going on with it yet, but it's starting up, and I'm gonna check into it. Maybe we could talk about it in the next show or the next show or something.
Yeah, and as for me, I had a DraftKings account before the news. I didn't play it though. I signed up and saw the interface and was like, this is garbage. I'm not playing DraftKings. But now I'm going to be forced into it. I probably will. I still have yet to find out how to make my own free game. Right now I'm only in Flying Brian's game, and the only reason for that was he sent me the link and it was easy. So I was disappointed because I really love Countermove. And Paolo, you brought up a great point with Glory and Bellator. No one else offers that. And as far as I know, DraftKings doesn't. I don't think, anyways. And that was fun. Like, I'm not a hardcore kickboxing fan, but I did enjoy playing free Countermove games for other organizations and things like that. Daniel, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was a lot of fun to beat the tout master Kyle Marley on a weekly basis in Countermove. But, I guess I'll have to evolve and see what DraftKings is all about.
Now, Daniel, do you have a team ready to go?
Yeah, there's 5 players, right? Because my picks are underdogs anyway, so I know for a fact I'm going to meet the salary cap. So, all right, it's 5 guys, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's do this real quick. We're going to do Marlon Chito Vera. We're going to do Talis Latis. And then I'll do Christoph Jocko. So that leaves me with 2 more. And with those 2 more, we'll go with Bisping and Pickett.
Now, James, I know you already mentioned you have an account. You don't play at the moment, so I'm gonna assume you don't have a team.
I don't have one yet, but I'll probably have one come fight time or whatever. Some of my money, well, all my money from the counter move account got transferred over, so I got to use it anyway.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll probably make up a team. I mean, for me, usually, throw in a couple dogs and fights where they're relatively close. Like, there's definitely value on someone like Vera, like Daniel was mentioning. I mean, he thinks he's going to win. I think it's going to be a close fight, and with the layoff for Grant, there's certainly some value there. So he might be someone I would add. I think even Wilkinson you could put on your team. I think he has advantages in certain areas over Mirkani. I wouldn't go Bisping. Bisping could win. I just don't think he'd finish Anderson or anything along those lines. So I don't know if he'd be worth it necessarily. But yeah, I'd probably, and then obviously like your guys like Arnold Allen I think would win. I'm sure he's a big price tag though, so I don't know if I'd want to get him on the team. But just closer fights like Rivera, I would take over Pickett for example. I think he would be one.
James, do they score more on finishing or on points?
Yeah, finishing on the round. If you get first round finishes, that's the key, man. You get 100 points almost guaranteed.
Yeah, so Rivera would be a good pick then, because I think if he beats Pickett, he might do it early.
So I gotta pick first round finishers. Okay.
So yeah, so I got Breeze and Allen because in my opinion they're like the biggest lock to finish early here, but they're so expensive that I went with mostly underdogs here. So I got Brad Pickett because I think he's decently priced at 9,000, and Daniel made a good point that Cisco, he's a brawler with not a good chin, and that's a sign that he might get knocked out. So that's a good play there, I think. Bisping, like James said, there's a chance that he's going to win. It's by decision, but, he's a volume guy, and it's going to be a 5-round fight. If it goes 5 rounds, even if he loses, that might still be a couple of points there for a losing fighter at only 8,600. And then I got Gauti here because I still have to watch more tape studying this guy, but I know a lot of guys are so high on this, saying that he's some striking phenom or something, and it's going to light up this Finnish guy is fighting, so who knows.
Now, I know you know both counter move and DraftKings really well. I'm just curious, what for the scoring system, are there any differences with counter move or what counter move was, of course, and DraftKings?
It's mostly on salary that there's a lot of difference with the scoring. Like I said here, you basically have to look for the fighters that you think are going to finish the fight and they finish it the most impressively and the most quickly. So that's my strategy. It's I look up, okay, I'm going to line up the guys and say which of these guys have the best chances of finishing the fight early. Then I'm going to see what their salaries are and based on that. Obviously someone like Tom Breeze, we pretty much think it's a lock. He's going to freaking kill Nakamura within a minute or something like that. But look at him. This guy's priced 11,400. That basically means you're going to be picking 2 guys under 10,000 if you stash him in there. So he better get the job done. And then almost always you got to pick a couple of underdogs on here because I don't think you can pick double-digit fighters. Double-digit and 10,000 fighters for all 5 spots because that would be 50,000 overall, which is double your salary. But the thing about DraftKings is it's always they're based on the odds. The underdogs are always going to be a lower price than the favorites, whereas in counter move there were some odd scenarios where the underdog, a big underdog, was priced way more than the favorite. So it's a little bit more random with counter move scoring system. I remember Marquardt and Galloway. Now we know Marquardt won by knockout. Not a lot of people saw that coming, but he was one of the biggest underdogs in that card, and he was priced at 5,400 or one of the most expensive guys on there. So, DraftKings is a bit more, I guess, logical in the way it's arranged.
All right, I do have a DraftKings team made up. So I got Tom Breeze and I got Mako Namirkani. I got Francisco Rivera. I got Marlon Vera, and then I'm going with Talos Ladies as well, just because I believe he's the cheapest fighter. Other than Nakamura, which would make sense.
Nakamura.
I'm going with Ladies just because it could fit, and I'm obviously going to pick Ladies over Nakamura. But I'm still picking Musasi, but I definitely think, obviously, like I said, Ladies has a very good chance in the fight. So that's my team. I think that's about it. So, James, appreciate you coming on the show, especially on short notice and everything like that. Just let our audience know where they can find you on social media and what you got coming up with all your writing, MMA Oddsbreaker, Sportsnet, and of course your podcast, the Parting Shot Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Nick, and great to talk with two established gentlemen like Paolo and Dan, as well as yourself, Nick. So that's actually three of you. My math isn't very good. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Lynch on Sports, YouTube.com/Lynch on Sports. Always got a bunch of interviews coming out. You know how it goes, just run of the mill. Guys from all over the place, so you can check that out. As far as stuff, check out my interview with Gegard Musashi on Sportsnet.ca. That's all I got, guys. Take it easy.
All right, Daniel, where can we find you on social media? Where can we find your picks, everything like that? Anything else you want to plug? Go ahead.
My picks are at bestfightpicks.com, on Twitter at bestfightpicks. My podcast, Half the Battle. Go to YouTube, go to iTunes, go to SoundCloud. Make sure you subscribe this week. You know, James Vick co-hosted, and it was his last time he's going to co-host until he comes back from his fight. You know, he's off to training camp right now. Gonna go take out this Brazilian, and then when he comes back, he's gonna be my co-host again. But check out this week's episode with Chas Kelly. It was a really good one. Half the Battle.
All right, Paolo, where can we find your writing, your podcast, which seems to be on what's
hiatus?
the word? Hiatus. Yeah, it's on hiatus right now, but nevertheless, where can you find that? And of course, your writing. Where can you find that? And just let the listener know where they can find you on social media.
Well, on social media, you can find me at GoPauloMMA. I was going to say it right there, but I forgot to put up the sign because I got kicked out. And I recently did an article on Bisping and Silva for Sportsnet, at Sportsnet, same place where James has his Musashi interview. You guys should check that out, too. And I also write for At Today's Knockout. And like Nick said, I break down the DraftKings. I keep saying counter, see what's it doing? Like, DraftKings. Like I'm on my way to do the DraftKings preview right now, and I'm gonna have like a more pro look to it because it's honestly it looks just like a regular preview, and I tell you what you should probably do if you should draft this guy, take a shot at the underdog or so. But I think I'm gonna have a little bit more strategy in there just to spice things up a little bit. And my podcast at MMA Side Dish right now, it's a little bit on ice because we're changing the format. We're getting a couple of interviews down the road, and we've just been really busy. So, but you can check that out if you want. We got some older episodes. They're not some of them are not time sensitive, so you can still give them a listen at MMASideDish.com.
All right, and as for me, you can follow me on Twitter at NickUFC. You can check out my writing at BloodyElbow.com, MMAJunior.co, my website, and still a little bit at MMASoccer.com. But if you want to see most of my writing, that's over at Bloody Elbow. You can check out my other podcasts I hosted with Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence each and every week. It's called MMA Junior Radio. This week's show I should say, was the first ever show in nearly a year. We of course started the show April 1st of last year. That we haven't had a guest, so it was just me and Andrew talking MMA on this past week's. As for next week, I just did an interview with Bellator 151 co-main event fighter Fernando Gonzalez, so you can check that out on MMA Junior Radio next week, episode 48. And I believe that's about it, so appreciate you guys doing the show with me once again. James for the first time, and with that, enjoy the fights.